Good evening, students, and welcome back to another POB class. Today is November 24th, 2021. And we have been exploring the unit, internal organizational structures. And so we continue with our class today, and we're going to look at teamwork and communication. All right, so we are going to look at some of the guidelines that are involved for good conduct of management, and as it relates to staff relationships. We're going to evaluate the role of teamwork in the success of an organization. We are also going to outline strategies for effective communication within an organization. And perhaps, if time allows this evening, we will be able to discuss the personal needs that are satisfied through employment. Let us recap what we did on Monday. Now, we explored the very important topic of leadership. There's a case here, and we're going to review, and if you manage to produce the correct answers, then you would have mastered the content. If you are having difficulty with answering any of these questions, or perhaps got any of them incorrect, I suggest to you that you go back and review the section on leadership. Now, Terence Foster recently inherited an auto mechanic shop from his father. Terence believes that it's time to make some changes in how the business is managed. Many employees have worked for my father for long enough, he says. I shouldn't have to be regularly consulting and meeting with them. They should make their own decisions without needing my input. Terence knows that there are some risks in adopting this management style, but thinks the benefits of implementing it is far greater than the risks involved. First question, what leadership style do you believe Terence's father originally used in his business? Let me give you a minute to think about it. If your answer was the autocratic leadership style, you are correct. Very good. And when we go back to the case, you will see where it says that my employees have worked for my father for long enough. He says, I shouldn't have to have regular consultations and meetings with them. And the regular consultation and meetings is an indication that the style that his father used was an autocratic one. Second question. What leadership style is Terence seeking to implement? Let me give you a hint. Terence wants workers to be able to make decisions without needing any input from him. What leadership style do you think that is? Excellent. That is correct. The laissez-faire leadership style is the one in which there is little to no involvement of the boss or the entrepreneur in the decision making of the employees. They're basically left to work independent of the manager or boss. Third question. What are the risks that Terence is likely to encounter by using the leadership style you identified above? Let's think about this one. Now, we know that Terence doesn't want to have regular meetings and consultations with the workers. That would suggest that the workers are expected to be working independently at their own time and leisure. What do you think will happen as a result of that? No boss to hold you accountable, no supervision, constant supervision taking place. You're thinking what I'm thinking? That is correct, right? There is a risk that the employees will start to put their own personal interests above that of the organization, as well as they can slack off on the job and become unproductive and lazy. They are not being held accountable. So they might have that impulse, if they don't have the discipline, to just do whatever they want to do. So those are some of what we call the disadvantages of using this type of leadership style, which is a laissez-faire leadership style. And the final question: identify 2 benefits Terence may experience as a result of implementing the leadership style you identified. 2 benefits. Let me give you a second to think about that. All right, so 2 benefits may be, and not limited to, the fact that when the employees have a high level of independence, and it would appear that the boss trusts their judgment and trusts them to complete the task given to them and execute the goals of the organization, it follows through then that the employees may feel more valued and committed to the business. There's also a greater reliance on each other, since they cannot run to the boss to help whenever they want to. They are going to have to consult more with their team members or their co-workers. All right, so if you got all of them correct, very good. If you had some difficulty identifying the different leadership styles and so forth, just go back and review your notes. You will get there. Now we just spoke about teamwork and how having to communicate and interact and lean on each other in an organization for support will promote team building and teamwork. So too, teamwork is a very important element to an organization. In order to create an environment where employees feel a sense of belonging, it is extremely important that the conditions are created that promote good staff relations. One of the ways to achieve this is the use of team-based projects and effective communication methods. Now, what is teamwork? You would have been placed in your groups. You would have been interacting with persons, having given Ms. Kelsey giving you different assignments from the beginning of the semester until now. What essentially would you define teamwork as? Teamwork within the context of a business simply involves grouping workers together to work cooperatively to achieve the same goal. Teamwork, like any other activity, has the potential to be highly beneficial to the business. However, it also can be catastrophic. It is important, therefore, that managers take some key factors into consideration, such as the personality trait of the potential team members when designing the team for a given project. Now, what is the role of teamwork in the success of an organization? In any organization, it is inevitable that individuals will be required to work in teams. The reality is, no one is an island. And so you have to work with other persons. It is important that management encourages teamwork and establishes solid teams, as the success of an organization depends on the ability of individuals to work well together. When teamwork is encouraged, a lot more work is done and a lot more profit can be earned. In the absence of teamwork, conflicts may arise, which can definitely undermine or even hinder the performance or of the organization, the level of profit that they can achieve, and even ultimately the time it takes to achieve a goal. Now, what are some benefits and some costs of teamwork? What are some advantages and disadvantages of working in teams in an organization? Let's explore them. Now, a few advantages as displayed on your screen. The first advantage of teamwork is that the members are able to pool their ideas, they can share their ideas, which should result in an improved quality decision-making process. Secondly, teamwork fosters the participative approach, which gives a feeling of belonging. It improves the group's morale. It improves their motivation, their confidence, their willingness to participate in the activities or work of the organization. It also encourages innovation. Fewer experienced workers can learn from the more experienced ones. It can also boost productivity, allowing workload to be shared equally among members according to each member's strength. And finally, a benefit of teamwork is that you can develop strong, lasting relationships. Now, what are some of the drawbacks? What are some of the cons or disadvantages of teamwork? Forming an effective team can be very time-consuming. And everyone here can attest that sometimes we have personality clashes, and this may cause conflicts to arise within the organization. It also slows down the decision-making process. Some team members may not pull their weight, which results in others being unfairly burdened. And finally, the time it takes to complete the task may be much longer than you would need to, simply because of the person that the task was given to, right? And so we have to think about these things when we are trying to group persons in an organization to work together. Now, part of a very important element to any organization's effectiveness is their ability to communicate. Now, communication rids us of a lot of problems, right? And so it's important that we understand how to communicate, we understand the process of communication, and we understand the various channels or medium that we can use to communicate within a business. And so on your screen, we are looking at the process that all of us goes through when we communicate. Now, it starts with the sender, and the sender is a person who wants to share the information. That's correct. So what they would do is that they encode the message, right? And select the channel through which this message will be sent. Then the message is sent from the sender to the receiver. And how do you know whether or not the intended message that you sent was received? Through the feedback. The feedback that you get from your receiver is an indicator of the effectiveness of your communication. Now we're going to look at types of communication, and you would have heard me make mention of effective communication. What is effective communication? This is where the receiver is able to decode the message accurately and provide appropriate feedback. Ineffective communication, however, is where the receiver either fails to receive the message or is unable to decode the message accurately and provide appropriate feedback due to noise or distortion or distractions. The following things must be taken into consideration when selecting your communication method. One, the medium or the channel. How am I going to communicate this information to the receiver? Am I going to say it? And that's considered oral communication. Will it be done in writing? Will it be done via email? Cost. The cost associated with the communication, right? The speed at which the information will be sent from the sender to the receiver. The quantity of the data. We know that for large images and bulky files, you cannot send them via email, right? So it depends on what you're sending. And the existence of barriers to communication and how or if they can be overcome. You have to think about those things. Now, I spoke about channels, right? And within an organization, we have two types of channels happening in the organization. We have what we call the formal channel, right? And this is the recognized form of communication within the organization. It can, you can make reference to the structure of the organization to get an idea in terms of who you should communicate with. All that good stuff, we call it the formal channel of communication. And as the image displays here, you will be of the impression that a meeting is taking place, right? A formal meeting is taking place in the office. Now, other forms of formal communication channels are sending out of memos, reports, hosting a meeting, or even using a suggestion box. Now, the informal channel is what we call the grapevine. In the grapevine, what happens is that the information that is shared using this channel may or may not be true. And sometimes it may result in confusion. So you and your co-worker over lunch having a conversation about something that happens in the office. That is an example of an informal channel. Now we are going to look at communication methods and channels. All right, so the written communication method would involve the use of letters, the use of memos, the use of reports, the writing of minutes, press release, bulletins, notices, and emails. And there are some benefits and some costs to using this method. Let us look at the advantages first. It provides written documents. It is always good to have things in writing. It serves as a point of reference for the future. It can be sent to persons far away, and you can confirm, explain, or clarify an oral message using this method. Disadvantages: sometimes you get no feedback, or not the feedback that you receive isn't quick enough. It also can be misinterpreted because although you can have a tone in your email, it is easier to misinterpret something in writing because you do not have the luxury of providing instantaneous feedback to clarify should the person misinterpret the information that you're sharing. It can also be costly and time-consuming to create. Second channel that we're going to look at are the oral communication channels, which is usually face-to-face meetings, interviews, telephone calls, So what are some of the benefits of those? It provides direct contact. It can be varied to suit the need of the receiver, and it allows for instant feedback. Disadvantages: it can be affected by noise, and so it can be distorted, can be quickly forgotten, and there might not be anything in writing as a point of reference. Visual communication. Visual communication takes the form of pictorial representation of the information or images. So it can be in the form of a photograph, graphs, charts, body text, gestures, posters, facial expressions. Now, we find that these are more interactive, easier to remember, and it creates greater interest. However, there might be difficulty in interpreting some of these images. They may require time to interpret, and it can be very expensive. Electronic communication, and this is a popular method of communicating, especially since the pandemic, where we use a lot of email, with the use of the internet, video conferencing tool like the one that we usually use for our live sessions, mobile telephones, you use your WhatsApp and your other conferencing tools to communicate, right? Now, there are some benefits to these electronic communication. It is fast, right? It creates interest and it encourages response. However, it can also not be received. You can send it and the person does not receive it, right? It's expensive and there's a risk of communication overload, which sometimes happens when you are getting a lot of communications via your email. You can sometimes overlook content because there's just too much in your inbox to comb through, right? All right. So for the rest of the class, you are going to go on the Moodle platform and complete the tutorial sheet that will focus on everything that we have covered to date. Should you have any questions regarding this lecture, feel free to post it in the chat forum that will also be on the Moodle platform. Your classmates and I are free to respond, to clarify, to add to the body of knowledge on the topics that we have covered. Do have a good night. Done quickly?